Hey everybody, welcome back to Game Day. Grace, David Schiele, Cory Mose, and today on the Believers Bench, we have an OG. Yes, an OG. In fact, well, he's really my OG. Terence Moore, joining us all the way in ATL, Georgia. Terry, you're an OG in this game. I just said it. You've been in the game for how many years? Do you keep count or do you not keep count anymore?
Well, if we want to go officially, 68 years, because that's how many years I've been on Earth.
Yeah.
Yeah, 68 years, I would say, as far as that is concerned. But as far as other things are concerned, it depends on what you're talking about.
So, in the business of sports journalism, reporting, editorializing, TV, all of it, because you do all of those things.
And I would have to break it down into different categories. Now, as far as being a professional sports journalist, I've been doing this since May 15th, 1978. And I say that because that was a week after I graduated from Miami, Ohio, and started working at the Cincinnati Enquirer, and then worked 3 years there, 5 years at the San Francisco Examiner, 25 years at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and since then I've done television and internet, everything from AOL Sports to Sports on Earth, and right now I'm a national sports columnist for Forbes.com. How much time do you guys have? I've done NFL Network. I've done ESPN Outside the Lines. I was on the Jim Rome show forever. And currently here in Atlanta, I do a show every Sunday night on the ABC affiliate, which is number one ABC affiliate in the country. And been doing that every Sunday since the late 1990s. And that's just for starters.
What's
Yeah.
been the biggest difference you feel like since the 70s to now, other than, of course, like the internet? But when it comes to reporting and doing sports journalism, what has been the biggest difference you feel like?
Corey, I'm going to give you the short version of this because
Okay.
David knows the long version because he and I are on this chat with a bunch of other of his peers. And again, I'm constantly whining about today's journalism because I'm old school
Ah,
journalism.
okay.
And one of the things that I believe in, and I left this out, I'm also a visiting professor of journalism at Davis alma mater, Georgia State. And one of the
Hey.
things I stress all the time to all of my students is three things: reporting, interviewing, and angles. And guess what, Corey? Those are three things that are not done today to my satisfaction in sports
Okay.
journalism and also in journalism in general. So that's the short version to answer your question.
What do you mean by angles? You mean different storylines, just for the viewers and listeners to know?
That's exactly right. And you know,
Okay.
and I like that you asked that because I always have my students put two words on the board before every class. Startle me. And that means give me something I don't know. It doesn't mean sensationalize me. Okay, startle me. And that what that means is you're gonna have to use some brain cells to come up with an interesting story that's going to hold my attention and hold the reader's attention. Okay, so angles to me is simply that: find something that's going to be tantalizing, interesting to the public, and particularly for people your age nowadays. I mean, we all know this is journalism's like this. Okay, society's like this. There's got to be something to catch your attention. All right, people don't read anymore; they scan. Okay, so there's got to be something that's going to grab your attention that's not sensationalized, okay? And so that's my philosophy because that's the philosophy I grew up with, and it's even more so now because of just the way society is going nowadays, and it's also what we're not seeing as a whole throughout all of journalism.
So, because of those three things that Terry just mentioned, okay, two things. Number one, that's why he's been in the game so long. That's the first thing. The second thing, it's the reason why there are so many people out there that find this guy incredibly polarizing. There are people that cannot stand Terence Moore just because of his sports opinions. Okay, we can't play it on YouTube, but I've heard the racist voicemails. We've read the threatening letters.
Uh,
Like, seriously. And if you just go onto his Atlanta Sports Unlimited, is that the right name of it?
That's
Atlanta Sports
exactly right.
Unlimited.
Right.
If you go onto Atlanta Sports Unlimited and he does a video on the Falcons, just read the comments. Like, that's all you really have to do. And my top question based off of that is, Terry, how do you keep the peace within your heart when you're facing all of that from the outside?
Well, and this ties right into what you guys are doing. and I love this concept of what you're doing here with this podcast, and that is the spiritual. There is no doubt about it that there is no way in the world I would have been able to survive in this business for, this is the 47th year as a professional sports journalist. The reason I say professionally is because 4 years in college at Miami of Ohio, where I went to school, the oldest college newspaper in the country, I was the first African-American writer of any kind for that newspaper. Okay, oldest college west of the Alleghenies, I should say. First black editor of any kind. And then in high school, the high school I went to, I was the first black writer for my high school paper. This is going way back to the early 1970s. We won awards all the time. So you can just about imagine being the first black, and that's just from that entity, because I was first black in a lot of things. There's a lot of things that you had to go through, a lot of situations that you were in that were, very, very tough. I mean, racist and otherwise. And through it all, and I can literally say through it all, even going back at a young age, the spiritual part of it was the thing that got me through every single situation. And certainly by the time I reached the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, where it basically was, when I came here in 1985 from the San Francisco Examiner, that's when I discovered that the New South basically means that we can drink out of the same water fountain as white folks. That's it. Everything else is still back in the 19th century. But the spiritual aspect was huge and is huge.
And my thing is just like, and I always talked about my dad about this because he was in the same time, he grew up in the same time period of integration and stuff like that. And so just the loving part, right? How we're supposed to love everyone. And I know growing up in that time, and especially when you're peaking in your career or starting to get into your career throughout that time period, how tough was it to do that commandment that Jesus calls us to do?
Oh, it was extremely tough, and I give you so many examples. And I wrote a book, by the way. That's something else. I do write books, too. I wrote a book on Hank Aaron. I was closer to Hank Aaron, the greatest baseball player of all time, than any other reporter. I knew Hank Aaron for 40 years. And my book is not a baseball book. It's not a sports book. It's called The Real Hank Aaron. It's a book about, Cory, what you're alluding to right here. How do you survive in this world of new racism? And this is what I mean by new racism. It's not fire dogs. It's not attack dogs. It's not Bull Connor. It's mind games. Okay, and there's always been mind games. That has always been the case for as long as we can go. And the one thing that we discovered over and over again through right here, the Bible, it's a lesson on how to handle mind games if we choose to understand that. And that is what the Bible, spirituality, that's what helped me through all those times was very early on, I was able to detect that it started right here, okay? That once you let somebody get here, then they've got you. And the way you keep them from getting here or controlling you is through what the scriptures tell us how we should handle ourselves.
Yeah, I was going to say mind games, not just from other people, but you're right. Like mind games with yourself too. Trying to push off those narratives that your mind is trying to tell you, or push off those narratives that kind of your heart is leading you in the wrong direction of. How do you kind of manage that? And you're totally spot on through the Bible, through scripture. And so thank you, first off, for sharing that. And when it comes to just those mind games, especially for someone who may be dealing with their own internal mind games with themselves, what would be, do you have a go-to verse? Do you have a go-to book that you like to refer back to when it comes to that part of things?
You guys told me that I have 4 hours on this show because I would need 4 hours to answer that question. Okay, where to start? But you know what? Let's turn to the scriptures. Let's go to Philippians chapter 4.
Okay.
Turn,
All right.
And I want everybody out there to do the same thing. Turn to Philippians chapter 4.
If you have your Bibles.
If you have your Bibles, ladies and gentlemen, and children, Philippians chapter 4, and we're going to go to, on down here. All right, here we go. Let's go to verse number 8. Verse number 8, and it says, finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true. Now I'm going to stop right there, okay?
Okay.
And you guys have learned, like I have learned, that it's always best to look at what's before the verse and what's after the verse, okay?
Yeah.
And that's all true. But I want to tell you, this is one of the examples in the Bible where what it says is what it says. And because this works, Okay, this is yes, and the thing is, before we continue, I want to say this too. I taught Sunday school for 30 years, teenagers. That's why I got gray hair, by the way.
Stressful.
And one of the things I always point out to my teenagers, and I still point out to this day, there's three stages here, and very few people do the first stage. And the first stage is read the Bible. If this is a subset of the people out there in the world, the number of people who actually read the Bible, I'm not talking about telling us the scripture here and there, is probably about this size right here. And they feel good about themselves. No, I'm not, but that's still not good enough. Then the second subset is the people who read the Bible study the Bible. What does it say? Okay, and then actually it might be the size of the tip of this pen here. Okay, and then the third and most important aspect. You guys are in my Sunday school class. What's the third and most important aspect when it comes to the Bible?
Read it, study it. Oh, apply.
That's it.
Let's go, David.
You got to apply it. Okay. So I want us to do all three things here when we go through this thing. We're going to read, study, and we're going to apply. Okay. And one of the things from being a journalist, and you guys can attest to this too, when you read, when you study the Bible, then you discover very quickly that this by far is the greatest book that's ever been written. And I'm talking not only from a spiritual standpoint, I'm talking about if you study this, there is no way that this could have been written by man without divine guidance. Because if you study it and you apply it, then it's got to come from a source beyond us. So here we go. Okay, let's look at that verse. Verse 8. Finally, brethren. And first of all, when this is fine, this is saying that, listen, this is what I really want you to get here. Whatever things are true. David, does it say that whatever some things are true, whatever a few things are true? What does that say?
It says whatever is true.
What does that mean? Whatsoever things are true. What does that mean to you?
So when it comes to truth, whatever is the truth.
Okay. All right.
All of it.
And here's the thing now. Cory, what's the converse of that?
False, whatever is not true.
Right. And who is the father of all lies?
The enemy.
That's right. And here's the beautiful thing about the Bible. See, we're studying this, and even just the so-called simplest verses are deep. Okay? Finally, whatever things are true, whatever things are honest, pretty self-explanatory, whatever things are just, okay? Whatever things are pure. And by the way, whenever we read the Bible at any time, it's God talking to us individually at that time. So these words, what it means to me, it might mean something differently to you, Cory, something differently to you, David, and to whoever else is listening out there. Whatever things are lovely, whatever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, and if there be any on these things, and I'm not going to go further than that. And people in their free time, I want you to read before and afterwards. But just right there, that just tells you what I said at the beginning of this particular segment about mind games, about controlling yourself. Okay, this is telling that a lot of this starts with us. It's like what we're putting up here. I mean, if you're putting garbage up here, David, what's going to happen?
Garbage is going to come out.
So in other words, you got to be careful who you hang around with. Hello, okay? You got to be careful of what you watch on television. You got to be careful where you go.
Yeah.
Who you associate, all that stuff is very important. And you got to also be very conscious of how things affect you. Because here's the thing, okay? Now I'm throwing a lot of stuff out here, but this all goes back to answer that central question that I learned a long time ago in this business when I was, again, I'm going to back up because this is very important to the subject. I was the first black on my newspaper, first black on my baseball team and various football teams, first black sports writer in history of the Cincinnati Enquirer, been around since 1840, first black in the history of the San Francisco Examiner, first black columnist, meaning that I was allowed to write my opinion for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, first in the history of the South in general. I'm the first black person ever to cover a National Football League team on a regular basis. First black person ever to vote for baseball Hall of Famers on a regular basis, and my record will never be broken. I'm the longest black person ever to write his opinion for a major newspaper. And I'm saying all that because I had to deal with a lot of mind games. And I had to deal with a lot of what I'm going to tell you. And this is one of the biggest things I'm going to tell you too and the people out there that I discovered a long time ago, okay, through trials and tribulation. And that is, contrary to popular belief, nobody can make you mad. Nobody can make you angry. No, they can't do that. Okay? So, Cory,
Yeah.
when you get angry and you get mad, you get upset, who's doing that?
I mean, I think yourself is allowing yourself to get bothered or triggered.
That's it.
Yeah.
I mean, and once you realize that, you can own the world. People don't have that much control over you unless you let them have control over you. So that's one of the things I learned early in my dealings as the first black in different situations. And I did have a lot of good white mentors along the way. So I'm not going to say that they were all evil or anything like that. And I did have a lot of black people who were evil too. So it went both ways.
You had haters out
But
there.
haters in the house. But once you learn that concept that is about you, okay? But watch this, okay? There's a trick to that. The trick to that is it's about you, but it's about you in relationship with what, David?
You and the relationship you have with the Father.
That's exactly right. Because it's you and God going. Yeah, so you're not battling this thing alone because the person who wants you to think that you're battling this alone is the guy that's not of us.
Okay, I don't know if you had that was awesome, by the way. That was dope. I don't mind going to school real quick. Yeah, that was cool. I don't know, David. I just have one more question before if you want to hop in. Just something that you mentioned earlier in the sense of mind games and not letting garbage fill your mind. And, one balance that I go back and forth with, if I'm being transparent right now, is how much I'm intaking sports knowledge and how much I'm intaking sports news compared to how much I'm intaking scripture, and time with Christ. How did you kind of balance the two? Because you got to intake that knowledge to be good at your job. But at the end of the day, you don't want that to become at the chair of your heart. You still want Jesus to be at the chair. And so what's any advice for anyone that may be listening that have a big investment in their jobs, but also still trying to follow Christ at the same time?
Cory, I'm so glad you asked that question because one of the things that I think that leads to a very productive life is realizing, what you all know, that the spiritual side of our lives is the most important part of our life. Okay? We got to realize that. The second thing that we got to realize along the way to answer your question is that everything's the same. And David heard me say this many times. Everything's the same. And we can talk more about that as time goes on. And what I mean by that is that to fulfill a good life, you want to be the holistic person. You don't want to be a one-trick pony. And I've been very fortunate where there's a concept that I didn't quite understand when I was younger, but looking back, God was with me for all my life. There's no doubt about it because I was doing these things without realizing, without being able to articulate them. And what I'm getting to is this. Whenever you just focus on one thing, then that's not good. And I'm going to give you a personal example that I was very fortunate of. When I was a sophomore in high school, I thought I wanted to be a baseball player, a football player, professionally. I was pretty good. I mean, I was pretty good.
Talk your stuff.
It was pretty good. We lived in Milwaukee at the time. So my sophomore year in English class, my English teacher brings in the sports editor of the Milwaukee Journal, Bill Dwyer, and he starts talking about sports writing. It's like, I didn't know you could be a sports writer. I said, that's interesting. And there's just a lot more to the story where I had my dad take me down to talk to him, whatever. Make a long story short, so I've told my English teacher, Mr. Griesbach, I said, I want to be a sports writer. He says, well, first you need to join the school newspaper. I didn't know we had a school newspaper. So I joined that, and ended up becoming news editor of it and went from there. But at the same time, Cory, I still played baseball. I still played football. I mean, I was one of the stars of the baseball team, one of the stars of the football team. I mean, my senior year in Milwaukee, we went undefeated. We set records that still have not been broken. I led the team in tackles at middle linebacker. I used to jack people up. So I was pretty good. But I was also very good at
Yeah.
newspaper stuff, which I think is kind of proven to be true. Okay, when I went to Miami, Ohio, I didn't major in journalism because the advice I got back in 1974 was best to major in something else, just in case you can't make it in journalism. Because back at that time in the 70s, everybody wanted to be Woodward and Bernstein because of the Washington Post, Watergate.
Yeah.
Okay, so I went to Miami, Ohio, where I could write a lot, and I majored in. And I know David knows this, but Cory, what do you think I majored in Miami?
So it wasn't journalism. I'm gonna just
Nope.
go with like sports science or some type of thing like that.
Okay, well, David, what was it?
It was econ.
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 Wow.
Let's see.
Economics?
Let's let's see here. Sports econ. How far away can you get from the two? And so the concept is what I'm trying to say is to answer your question is that I've always been conscious to work all sides of my brain.
Okay.
You
Yeah.
know, just like my biggest hobby right now, and or I always been has never been sports. I'm the world's biggest JFK assassination buff. There's nobody that knows more about the Kennedy assassination than me. Okay, I mean I get a thrill out of going to Dallas to Dealey Plaza where JFK was shot on November 22nd, '63, looking for stray bullets.
No
Okay,
way.
you know, like 60 years later. I mean, this is the truth. And so the more you get these your other side of your brain working, the better. And then the other side of that too is I'm a firm believer. One of the things that I think has helped me tremendously, and I advise each of you to do this along with everybody else out there. I learned a long time ago to make sure you have somebody of quality in your life at every decade. Okay? I'm 68, and I am so blessed to have these young people like David, and I got some other ones like Rashad Milligan out there, and Jared Oliver, these young guys in their 20s. Okay, we're learning from each other. Okay, I mean I learned so much from these guys. When I'm teaching my these teenagers in church, it's not a one-way thing. I'm not sitting up there saying, I want you to turn the first back. No, 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 no. This is a back and forth. I'm learning. I'm
Yeah.
learning. Okay. And then I got people in their 30s and their 40s and the 50s, and I'm feeding off of them. And then I go the other way. I got people now that I'm 68, 70s, 80s, and 90s, and I think that's one of the keys to life. Is don't become a one-trick pony. Okay, expand your horizons. Just like in my journalism classes, even though I teach sports, we're not reading sports. Nah, we ain't gonna be that kind of party. We're reading everything. Okay, I require them to get the AP app, and the assignment is to read every single thing in the news.
I know they hate
Okay,
that.
so
I know they hate that.
well, in the beginning they do, and let me tell you, I know I'm kind of talking a lot here, but I just got to throw this out here because this is very important to where we're at. All right, back in 1973, were any of you guys born in 1973?
Not even thought of.
Yeah.
No.
All right, so in 1973, still in Milwaukee, and I was a rising junior in high school, and I was picked for this new class called Contemporary World Affairs. Okay, 7 of us. This I was the only black person. 7 of us. The teacher was the meanest teacher in the school. Her name was Miss Wolf. Never smiled. She actually looked like a wolf, come to think of it. But anyway, Miss Wolf, okay? And so there's the first day of class. There's 7 of us. And she says there will be no test in this class. And I'm thinking, oh, this woman is not that bad. She says, but there will be 4 quizzes. She says, and I will not tell you when the quizzes will come. And I figured, okay, I can handle this. And she said also, there will be no books in this class. But, she says, you have to get a subscription to the Milwaukee Journal, the what was that? The National Observer, which was equivalent to the Wall Street Journal back then, Newsweek, Time Magazine, and U.S. News and World Report. Now I'm thinking, like,
Yeah.
where's this going? Where's this going? And then she says, and you got to read because your quizzes, which are only going to be 4 questions on each quiz, can come from anywhere in those publications. So I'm raising my hand and saying, I'm like, when you say anywhere, do you mean anywhere? She says, yes. I went home, and this is really one of the first time I really had an argument with my parents. I said that I got to drop this class because this woman's crazy. And my parents said, no, you're going to stick with that class. No, I got to get out of this class. It's a terrible class. That forced me, back then in 1973, to read every single, 50 years ago, 51 years ago, read every single word of everything. And today, you know where I'm going with this. To this day, I read every single word of every publication that I read, and it's made me a more complete person.
That's awesome. I just think that's so cool to hear. Just knowing that, yeah, you don't want to be a one trick pony, right? You want to be able to have something, a lot of things in your bag, right? Like we like to say, you know. It's
Well, let me ask you guys this. Along those lines, I'll start with David. So, David, outside, I mean, you're a big time sportscaster
yeah, he
down
big
there in
time.
Tampa, big time, and he really
Awful
does a
announcing.
great job. But outside of sports, what is it that gives you joy?
Oh man, music, listening to music, reading books, playing video games, hanging out with my wife. As of recently, you were at my wedding, so yeah, those are the things that I do to unplug. That's because you always told us to have something that has nothing to do with sports. You were like, you need to have something that has nothing to do with sports. And as you probably also know, because I did tell you this, I think on the phone, is apologetics. So I've been doing a lot of reading and studying on that, which obviously has nothing to do with sports. But to your point of everything is the same, you can see the parallels sometimes in different things. So yeah, that has made me more of a complete person.
You know, and that was going to be my second question. Before I get to that, same question to Cory. What is it that gives you joy away from
Yeah, I'm a people
sports?
person. So anytime I'm around a group of people, that kind of gives me joy. I'm a gamer too, so I like to game. That does still involve sports though, 'cause I do sports games. So, but love board games as well. And funny enough, I just got back from a cornhole tournament. I love cornhole. Cornhole's awesome. So yeah, those are kind of like my getaways.
Yeah, and sticking with you, Cory, and I want to piggyback on the last part of what David said. Uh, Again, my philosophy: everything's the same. And one of the things that's in that concept is, certainly from a Christian standpoint, Christ, God, the Holy Spirit is in everything. Okay? If we look for it, if we understand that. So, given what you just said as what you enjoy outside of sports, give me what sort of spiritualness you may get out of those things.
I think at the end of the day, it's loving people, right? Even in a competitive nature, like board games or like cornhole, right? You want to be able to still love your competitor. You want to be able to love your teammate in the right way, even if they're not playing well. You want to encourage them and uplift them, and exhort them, right? And so that's where I kind of see Christ in those type of things and those type of activities is how can you support and love the person that you're competing with or the person that you're competing against. So
So you.
Okay, so I forgot one other hobby, which was
yeah,
drumming.
facts. Yeah.
I need to put that in there too.
You didn't know that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know I play the drums.
I did not know. You've been holding out on me. I did not know that.
You didn't know that?
Yeah.
Whoa. That's
Oh, okay.
deep.
Well, I gotta send you a couple of videos then. Yeah.
For sure, yeah.
Okay, so for me right now, the apologetic side of it kind of explains itself because that's in was that First Peter or Second Peter where we have to be ready to make a defense for the hope that's within us. That's in Scripture. The second thing when it comes to hanging out with my wife, I'm currently and I'm always going to be learning how to love my wife the way Christ loves the church, which is also in Scripture. So I'm working on that too. And then the third thing, when it comes to drumming, when we talk about the scripture, you always tell us about Colossians 3:23. For me, that scripture comes up
Hey, before you continue, there's a lot of people out there saying that. What is he talking about? Colossians 3:23. We need to turn to Colossians 3:23 and read that to the people.
All right. So let's get back into our Bibles, everybody.
It's never a bad
That's
thing.
exactly right.
Yeah, let's get back into the Word.
This could change somebody's life.
It could. We're gonna go to Colossians 3:23. This is my favorite scripture, and if I didn't make a promise to my great grandmother that I would never get a tattoo, I would have gotten this one tattooed on.
Proud of you for keeping that promise, though.
Yeah, great mama didn't she ain't play that. So we're at Colossians chapter 3, verse 23. It reads, "Whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord and not for men." Now 24 is important, so I want to get into 24. "Knowing that from the Lord you will receive the inheritance as your reward. you are serving the Lord Christ.
Yeah.
That's what it says. That's
Amen.
Colossians 3:23 and 24. Now, that's my motivating factor when it comes to sportscast. So I have to remind myself of that before I get on the air, because I need to make sure that I have a sportscast that pleases God and not man.
I needed to hear that.
We get too
My God. My God.
There it is. That's actually real quick. I'll put a pin in what I was saying or what I was getting to. There's a prayer that I pray before every sportscast now. And that prayer is, I pray that you speak to my vocal cords, you think through my mind, none of me, all of you. This will be a sportscast that pleases you and not man. That's it. And then I do my vocal exercises and I warm my jaw up because I do have to talk for the next 3.5 minutes. So that is a prayer that I pray before every single sportscast. And we've seen the results of that recently with the awful announcing articles and everything else that's been blowing up. I can't say that was just me. I've been saying a specific prayer before every single time I go out there. And you know what? We learned this from when Jake Camarda was on with us, that even if the show doesn't go the way I thought, okay, I stumbled a couple of times. It's just, you know what? Okay, whatever. If someone sends an email because I spelled something wrong in the lower third, it's all good because I know who I belong to. It's cool. I'm not going to let man's opinion change how I think of myself or how I view myself or invalidate the prayer that I prayed. So Colossians 3:23. That's also a scripture that comes up every time I think about drumming, because when I was playing the drums coming up, I was always in a rock band or the pep band in school, because once I broke my wrist and I stopped playing sports, I was like, I got to do something. And so I did so football season, I was on the broadcast side. And then basketball season, I was in the pep band. So I went from sidelines recording the game and reporting on the game to sidelines on the drums during the winter. And I realized once I got a little older, I had never actually played the drums in church, which means I had never dedicated like my hands to the Lord. He's the one that gave me the talent. And so that's the other part where it's like, you may have a gift, you may have a talent, but you should use that talent to work heartily onto the Lord and not for man. And I think the best way for me to do that on the drums is, if I ever have an opportunity to play at church, which I've had a couple of times, I should do it. And instead of just, trying to drum for, whatever reason, just kind of like a selfish reason, I guess.
Yeah, and that's all good. And there's something you said, David, earlier that I want us to talk about. And I got a specific thing in my mind on this. And I was thinking about this the other day. You talk about prayer.
Yeah.
I don't think we talk enough about prayer. And when I say, I'm talking about as Christians, we don't talk enough about prayer, because it's kind of this concept where I think people just hear it and they don't quite get it. Okay. And I want to ask each of you, because I'll give you my example here too in a minute. Was there a specific time when you really understood what prayer was about and / the power of prayer?
Yeah, I got one off the top of my head, and it was just from an example from my mother. That's when I kind of realized, when I was still living in the house. I think I had to have been freshman in high school, sophomore in high school. But I remember coming down one day, and my mom, I always knew she prayed, because all loving mothers, that's what they do, right? And they take time to get into their closets, their praying closets. But today, that particular day, she was praying by the bedside. And she usually closes the door when she does that. But this time it was like cracked open a little bit. So I heard murmurs, and I was just wondering, like, what is she doing back there? So, as a observant kid, went over there and I saw her on her knees praying. And the prayer was so powerful about her kids, about her marriage, and just about protecting everyone in her family with the blood of Christ. And knowing that our family is blessed, knowing that we have 4 healthy kids in our family, right? And there hasn't been any detrimental injuries or accidents to any of us. And we've been in a lot of car accidents in our family. And the Lord has blessed all of us in protection. And so from that moment, I kind of got an idea of my mother does this every day. I know she does with the same intensity, with the same passion, with the same love and belief that the Lord was going to come through. And I think that was kind of the first moment for me, seeing someone else pray to God every day with such compassion and knowing that the Lord did answer every single day in our protection. And so, yeah, that was probably my biggest example is my mother. So,
And David, before we get to you, that is so deep because my story is very similar to that. That's why I wanted to piggyback on what you just said. And this goes back to a couple of things. One of the things, and David, you probably seen this before. I keep a saying on my refrigerator. I got a little thing. Hold on a second. Let me get it for you.
little show and tell.
I've kept this on my refrigerator door forever. The best sermon is a good example. Okay? And this is not just a saying for me because, and I'll give you a short version of this again too. I grew up in South Bend, Indiana, home of the University of Notre Dame, little football team that they got. And so my mom and dad had a large family. My mom, they each had 9 brothers and sisters. Everybody lived in South Bend except for one aunt. We had 42 first cousins. They all lived in South Bend. So we had these two sides of the family. You had the Moore side and the Graham side, my mom's side. The Moore side, I hope they're not listening. They weren't exactly the church-going people. The Graham side was all of that. And the side of the neighborhood, town we lived on, was on the Graham side. So that's what I grew up in. The church-going family. Never heard anybody on the Graham side say a swear word, ever, okay? And it was just that type of existence. But so I watched that at an early age, as a teenage, as a little kid. But here's what I'm getting to. October 25th, 1965, one of my first traumatic moments ever. 9 years old, my grandmother dies, my maternal grandmother. So traumatic, I still remember that to this day, okay? And it was 5 days before my 10th birthday, okay? So she dies, but at the same time, my parents, particularly my mom, did a very good job of preparing my 2 brothers and I was the oldest, that, for the funeral and just the whole truth that our grandmom was not dead. She was still alive. She was living eternally in heaven. And it was just explained so well that it was just kind of like, it just kind of stuck with me, okay? So, a few days after the funeral, our favorite Aunt Flossie, lived on the street right next to us. We were over at her house all the time. And she did this before, but for some reason, it's like God made this very apparent to me that I was paying attention this time. And Cory, this is going to sound very familiar. We're in the living room watching cartoons or something like this. I'm like 10 years old, something like that. And I can hear my Aunt Flossie in the laundry room, like talking. And I was like, she's talking. There's nobody else here, And I was like, okay. I thought maybe it was a neighbor, back in those days you had porches, and I thought she was on the porch. And this goes on, goes on for like a few weeks, and so finally I just kind of sneaked back there, just kind of see who was back there. You know where this is going? And there was nobody. Well, there was somebody there. It was God. That's what he was talking to. And that's really when I discovered at a young age what this prayer thing was all about. And it was something that I picked up on automatically. I mean, I've seen people pray in church, obviously, that sort of thing. But that's when it became very clear to me that this was a real individual thing. This was a personal thing with each and every one of us. David, what say you?
Yeah, so for me, it took me a while to really understand prayer was communication with God. I thought prayer was, I don't know if I could actually give it a definition. I just thought it was something, I guess, official, maybe like a buttoned up ceremonial thing that you would do, I guess. But truthfully speaking,
not to interrupt you, but you know what?
Yeah.
Most people believe that.
Yeah. And I thought, there had to be maybe a certain time, maybe a certain way. Like, what do you do? Like, but when I really understood it, it was really just communication with God. And it's not like you had to put it in MLA format or anything. Like, sometimes you just got to talk, especially because he already knows your heart.
Yeah.
So like, so once I understood that, I was like, oh, okay. So now, I'll say a prayer if I'm trying to figure out, hey, should I take the expressway or the regular road today? What should I do? That kind of thing. Really just leaning on the Lord, or really yielding, submitting to His direction. Having Him guide my steps.
Yeah, you know what this is, guys. What this is coming to an understanding between two things that most people don't discover until decades later. Well, no, let me back up. A lot of people don't discover what I'm going to say until decades later. Most people don't ever discover what I'm about to say. Okay? We're talking about spirituality. Not the game, not the game, not the game. We're talking about spirituality. No, I just had to throw it there. We're talking about spirituality, okay? And what people get mixed up when it comes to Christianity is religion. One of the things I tell my Sunday school kids all the time, and the ones that give me for the first time, they gasp when I say this. I say, religion is evil. It's like, oh, I can't believe you said that. Religion is evil, okay? It should be about spirituality. I mean, I religiously follow Notre Dame football, okay? I religiously eat salmon. That doesn't make me closer to God, okay? Spirituality, I mean, Cory, what's the difference between spirituality and
I mean, I
religion?
think it's a lifestyle and a belief system, right? Like, I feel like spirituality, you can feel it. Like, you can feel the passion, you can feel the love, you can feel the relationship with Christ. And religion is more just so works based sometimes. And I just think at a certain point, you can tell the difference between the two by the way your life looks. And that's just me.
You know, there are 66 books in the Bible. You know what emotion is not stressed? Feelings. I dare anybody out there to find where the Bible talks about feelings. The Bible talks about the truth, right? Ye shall know the truth, finish that. And the truth shall
Yeah.
make you
Set you
free.
free. Mm-hmm.
Right. It's about the truth. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father except through me. It's about the truth. So, David, why is it important for us to realize that this book right here, why is it important for us to realize that this book right here does not stress feelings, it stresses truth? Why is that important for us to realize that?
Because we can't base our life, our decision making, our choices on our feelings. They need to be based on
But
truth.
why? How come we can't base it on feelings? Why can't we do that?
Well, because that could steer you in the wrong way, and you could end up falling into a cycle of displaying the fruits of the flesh, and we know that produces death, right? The wages of sin is death.
And what about going back to what we said before?
Hmm.
Mind games, mind
Mind
games.
games. Yep.
Letting
Yeah.
people get into your head. That's feelings. Well, you hurt me. Wait, did you? What did they do to hurt you? You hurt my feelings. Well, I mean, again, that's not in the Bible. And the way, and this is not me talking. This is what the Bible says. I mean, you alluded to this. I think one of you alluded to this earlier. What is considered the love chapter in the Bible?
1 Corinthians 13.
That's right. Okay. 1 Corinthians 13. Okay. Let's turn to that for a second here.
All right.
This is what people read at weddings, and I believe did. You guys read this at your wedding, David? I can't remember.
We actually, yes, we did have we had the wife of the couple that did our premarital counseling. She did read 1 Corinthians 13.
Okay. Now, I want people to listen to this again. This is considered the love chapter in the Bible. I mean, it's been like that forever. The love chapter. Okay? I'm stressing this again. The love chapter. This ties into something else that we talked about earlier about love. Okay? Now, I want one of you guys to read it through verse 7, and I want you to tell me what it does not say, or what does not allude to. Start reading.
I got it. If I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, I'm reading ESV by the way, but have not love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith so as to remove mountains, but have not love, I am nothing. If I give away all I have, and if I deliver up my body to be burned, but have not loved, I gain nothing. Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things.
I'll just stop right there because uh, here's a quiz for you, David. What is not mentioned here in this love chapter so far? What has not been alluded to?
It does not say love is a feeling.
There we go. There's no allusion at all to feelings, ladies and gentlemen, and boys and girls. Continue, Cory.
Love never ends. As for prophecies, they will pass away. As for tongues, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will pass away. For we know in part and we prophesy in part. But when the perfect comes, the partial will pass away. When I was a child, this is my favorite verse. When I was a child, I spoke like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I gave up childish ways. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall know fully, even as I have been fully known. So now faith, hope, and love abide. These three, but the greatest of these is love.
Okay, so Cory, feeling, did we miss it?
No, I just read it. I just read it.
There's nothing about feeling.
I don't think I saw feelings at all.
Right. So why do we get so involved in feelings?
Because the world tells us to.
It does. And again, I'm going to bring this full circle, okay? Because, and Cory, you in particular brought up love several times. How do you love your enemies and love blah, blah, blah. And and this is an example of how everything is the same, okay? And another thing I'm a big history nut. I love history, okay? And particularly American history. And I'm sure you and others out there have heard a guy named Martin Luther King Jr., right? Okay? And people get Dr. King all wrong. Dr. King, people say, "Oh, he loved everybody." Yeah, but you know what? He put an asterisk there. Okay, for instance, and you are young guys. Okay, and I know probably got a lot of young people listening out there. Do you guys know who George Wallace was? Who was George Wallace?
I'm actually drawing a blank right now.
George Wallace was the governor of Alabama back in the '60s who hated black people so much so that when he was inaugurated in the early '60s as governor of Alabama, he stood on the state capitol of Alabama and said, "Segregation now, segregation tomorrow,
That guy.
segregation forever." Okay?
Oh my
Yes,
God.
that guy. That guy was sort of like it was like you had Dr. King on one side and you had in one frame, and then you had George Wallace in the other frame. Okay? And I'm sitting on George Wallace because I could bring up some other people, but this George Wallace, Dr. King thing is very analogous to where I'm going with this love thing. Okay, so Dr. King would always say that despite of what George Wallace said and did, that he still loved George Wallace. Okay, but it wasn't it certainly wasn't a romantic love. Okay, and it wasn't certainly wanting a love of George Wallace as a whole. It was a love of George Wallace as a human being, but he didn't love what he did. Okay, there's a difference. Okay, it's an agape love. All right, and so and the reason I'm saying that is that was very important to me too. Is that from a Christian standpoint, certainly with the battles I had faced coming up with newspapers, is if all the battles I had to face. If I was hating that person, that editor, that reporter, that guy that called me the N-word, and there were many, or that kind of stuff, then that's not hurting them. That's hurting me. Because, that's feelings, and that's going to come back on me. But if I realize that this love thing is more of an agape thing, as opposed to an eros thing, which is more like a romantic thing, then then you understand that you're still fulfilling what God wants us to do in the Bible as far as love, but at the same time, you're able to survive in your daily living. I know it's a mouthful, but anyway, that's kind of like what I see with that verse.
Terrence, I
Yeah.
did wanna round it back to the very first thing. We talked about the three things: reading, study, application. I wanted to know when you first read the Bible. Like when did that happen, and at what point did you make that personal decision to follow Christ?
I was
Hmm.
10 years old. St. John's Baptist Missionary Baptist Church in South Bend, Indiana, and one of the things that was very strong back then and strong to this day, St. John Baptist Church in South Bend is, and I got to figure out the best way to put this because I love this. Okay, in the state of Indiana, and this has been the case for years, the Sunday school attendance at St. John's Baptist Church in South Bend, Indiana, is the greatest of any missionary Baptist church in the state of Indiana. The Sunday school is so big at my old church in South Bend, Indiana, they had to build a building as big as the church to put beside the church for the Sunday school classes. So we were way ahead of our time. So I, along with others, at a young age, it was drummed into us about, and it wasn't said the way we've been saying here for the last 20 minutes, that there's about the spiritual thing, about the Christianity, about the religion thing and spirituality thing is different, and that came through Sunday school class. And I'm a little biased being a old Sunday school teacher, but church is a whole different thing. I mean, people think church saves them. Church does not save you. Okay, congregation does not save you. It's a salvation thing, and you get more, I would argue, out of Sunday school than you do out of regular church. That was my experience. And I was just so fortunate, along with my brothers, way back in the 60s at a young age, going through that rigorous Sunday school training that we had. Then we had vacation Bible study and Bible school. You guys probably went through that too, where you would have those type of sessions where I think a lot of churches
Yeah.
make it fun for the kids, and they're not really learning as much as they probably should. But back in those days, it was fun, but we also learned stuff too. So I got to give great kudos to just my upbringing in the church back in South Bend.
Okay. All right. I've never asked you that, so I've always wondered because you've said, you got to read scripture, you got to study scripture, you have to apply scripture, and I was like, well, I wonder when you actually did that.
And it's been an ongoing thing. You got salvation, you got sanctification. Sanctification is an ongoing process of our spiritual journey, and I can give you so many examples in my life. Like I said, I gave you that one example of when I was I call it a child, with hearing my Aunt Flossie and the prayer type of thing. But there's been these other moments, for instance, in every age group of my existence for the most part. But I'm going to give you something that I don't know if I may have told one or two people this before. My parents don't even know this, and my brothers don't even know what I'm going to tell you here. But this is when I was a teenager. And I'll set it up this way. My dad was, and he's passed on now. He was the historic figure. He was the first black manager and supervisor in the history of AT&T. This was back in the 60s. He has stories to tell about that. So we used to get transferred around the Midwest quite a bit when I was growing up, where I went to 3 different high schools in 3 different states in 3 different years. And that was not a pleasant experience because you're packing up and you're making new friends and what have you. That's part one. Part two, I am, and I always have been, and people probably will find this surprising, I'm a pretty introverted person, and definitely a loner. I get along well with people and that kind of stuff openly, but deep down inside, I could sit in my house for 2 months
Yeah.
not see anybody, I'll be just fine. I'm just exaggerating the point. But as a kid, I was pretty much introverted, and really I was very bashful to the point of just where it was kind of unhealthy, to be honest with you. And moving around kind of made it even worse. So here's where I'm going with this. So we moved to Milwaukee at the end of my sophomore year. It was like in 1972. And I don't know, have you guys ever moved? I know, David, you have, and you've been a new kid in town and that sort of thing. And it's a different experience. And so when we moved to Milwaukee, we've always went to predominantly white schools. And Milwaukee is a very interesting city, then and now, where there's a lot of self-segregation, where blacks stay on a certain side of town, not because they're told to, they just do it. So when we moved to Milwaukee, we lived on 94th Street, and the majority of blacks didn't live past 36th Street. So my parents would come home from work, and my mom, by the way, she was the first black supervisor in the history of the Federal Reserve in the Midwest. And they would come home and they would tell these stories about co-workers would say, well, where do you live at? And they said, 94th Street. You live way out there with them white folks? And in school, we get the same type of thing. And so the first day I'm in school, into my sophomore year at Milwaukee, James Madison High School, I joined the football team, joined the baseball team, ended up joining the newspaper. And I would get these questions from these black folks, like, why are you joining the football team? There's no black people on the football team. Why are you joining the baseball team? Why are you doing that sort of thing? And then you had the normal racism that you would have back in 1972 that you would have. So I remember the first day that I'm there, and I go into the lunchroom. And I don't know what it was like when you guys were in school, but lunchtime was very segregated when I was coming to school. You had the black kids sitting over there, you had the white kids sitting in there, you had the football players sitting there, the baseball players sitting over there, the newspaper people sitting over there. And I remember I was traumatized. I didn't know where to sit. And being bashful anyway, it just screwed me up. And so I found out that you didn't have to go to lunch in the cafeteria, that you can go off campus. So I spent, after that first day of school, from the rest of my sophomore year, my junior year, my senior year, never eating in the cafeteria. I always ate away from campus. And I would, my tradition was to walk about a mile and a half away to the baseball diamond where we played, and I would sit on the bench and I would eat my lunch. And here's where the spirituality comes in here, about what I said, this growing process. That's when I really was discovering more and more where you get this, you can get spirituality through secular songs. And there was a song that became my lunchtime song. And have you guys ever heard a guy named James Taylor by any chance? He was a pop singer. And James Taylor wrote this song called Fire and Rain. And it was, and back in those days, you had like a cassette player. I'm dating myself here. You guys probably don't know what a cassette player is. You ever heard of a cassette player?
Yeah.
Okay. So a cassette player, and I would have this song, and I would just listen to, and this was to be the song that not only would calm me down, but also that would give me this closeness with God. And remember now, I'm like 16 or 17 years old, and this used to start going through my mind. And the particular verse that was my song was the second verse. You guys allow singing on your podcast?
You the bass voice.
Go right ahead.
I'm just going to sing. I'm going to sing that second verse, and with the second verse, you can see why I say that this is a secular song, but I got the spiritual out of it. It goes like this: won't you look down upon me, Jesus? You gotta help me make a stand. Just got to see me through another day. Body's aching and my time is at hand. I won't make it any other way. And this went on from there. And that was a song. It was like God talking directly to me. And at the same time, I'd also throw in a prayer there about helping me get through the rest of the school day. This is me at 16, 17, 18 years old. Nobody else knew that I was going through this. And my parents, my mom still alive, and my brothers listening to it, they're probably listening to this going like, oh, I didn't know that. But it's the truth. And it's just one of the examples of how I discovered myself about this spiritual thing. That had nothing to do with religion. It was a spiritual thing that only I knew about in conjunction with God.
Thank you for the vocals, by the way.
Wow.
Appreciate
School
the
off
vocals.
campus. Yeah, that was great. That was great. Yeah, you're not in the group chat with the Georgia State folks. We get songs from Terry all the time.
That's right.
He sends hymnals all the time. So it's just like, all right.
While riding my bike, I got it.
Yeah. We're used to it at this point. We're like, oh yeah, he's singing again. Just take a listen to it. Well, Terry, we've had you for a long time, man, and we really, really appreciate your time, your wisdom, everything else that you just shared with us. I do want to get into sports real quick. Last thing, just your thoughts on, we know you're in Atlanta, just your thoughts on the upcoming Falcons season and the Georgia Bulldogs, if you don't mind.
Yeah, well, let's start with the Falcons. And for those who don't know, you probably know by now, the Atlanta Falcons are the passion of David Schiele. He loves this team, okay?
It's right there. The jersey's right there.
There you go. And I am considered in Atlanta the Falcons hater. You hate the Falcons. And I tell this to my group chat people all the time. This is literally true. I go to the airport quite a bit because I travel quite a bit. There's almost not a time that I don't go to the airport and I'm trying to go through security. And it's usually an African-American. They'll say, what would you think about them Falcons? And I already know where they're going with this. And I ask them, well, what do you think? And then they'll give me their answer. And then they say, well, you never give me your opinion. I know you hate the Falcons.
You're known around the city.
And I must say,
to be a hater?
Yes, I'm known.
Bro.
The hater.
That's crazy.
But
Bro.
But right. But I gotta say this. My producer for WSB did research, and he went back, and this was before last season. He said that I think it was 7 out of the previous 9 years, I nailed the Falcons record right on the head. Same with the Georgia Bulldogs. So they call me the hater because I'm generally right. Okay. Now, what do I think about the Falcons? All right. Well, I think all these people, and David, you can attest to this, who keep talking about that this is such a weak division. Huh? Who won the division last year? David, who won the division last year?
Tampa Bay.
Who won the division the year before that?
Tampa Bay.
Who won the division before that?
Tampa Bay.
So I think it's a weak division for the Falcons, not for Tampa Bay. Okay. So that's one thing. And then they get a 36-year-old quarterback for $180 million with a bad leg. What's that all about? And I blasted at the time that they did it, and all the Falcons lovers like that. Well, you've been a hater. I said, yeah, but they just got a 36-year-old quarterback in March with a bad leg. So then what happens during training camp? You got Raheem Morris, the coach of the Falcons says, well, we're not going to play. We're not going to play Kirk Cousins during the preseason games. Why not? Well, because he's still recovering from a bad leg. Wait a minute. Hold on. You lost me here. So then, why did you get a guy who's 36 years old and pay him $108 million with a bad leg? Anyway, that's one thing. So I think that's going to come back to haunt them. And I hope I'm wrong, but I think it's 50-50 that he does not finish the season. And one thing I give Kirk Cousins credit for, if you listen to him closely, I know you do, David, Kirk Cousins is one of the most honest players in the National Football League. And whenever people ask him about that leg, David, has he ever said that it's healed or I'm pretty confident he doesn't say that. It's like, well, I hope so. That's just scary to death if you're a Falcons fan. And I start with that because that's the most important position in football is your quarterback.
I got to watch Penix in person in the Sugar Bowl. I covered the Longhorns, so I was there. And y'all know what happened that game. And so, like, my perception of Penix is probably not realistic because I saw him play at literally the most flawless game I've ever seen a quarterback play with my own two eyes. And so, yeah.
Well, but let me ask this, Cory. Okay, that aside, okay, I want you to name all the times in your lifetimes. Okay, not that long compared to me. Name all the times in your lifetimes when a rookie quarterback in the National Football League led a team.
CJ Stroud last year. Shout out Texans.
Keep going.
He goes crazy. What? I'm about to say Luck did it. I'm trying to think. RG3 didn't do it. He got hurt.
Andrew Luck.
He did? They went to the playoffs that year?
No, he did it.
Did Trevor
he did
rookie year? No, they had a horrible rookie year.
I'll save you time. You're not going to be able to count more than one hand.
Yeah.
So maybe you can roll the dice. Maybe it might happen because I think that's going to be your thing. Okay, then the other part of the Falcons part, and we'll get to the Bulldogs. When it comes to teams that are Super Bowl teams, they always have, generally speaking, two things. Franchise quarterback, we just talked about that. Okay, I think there's a question about that. And a disruptive force in the front seven. Okay, on defense. Now I know what people out there are saying. Oh, they just picked up this guy. All right, David. Before I continue with this, what do you think about Judon? Do you like him?
You're a solid piece.
So I like yes. So I like yes. So he's
Judon. For those who don't know, the Falcons just
third round pick.
They traded him.
Correct?
Yeah, they traded for him. Yes.
Yeah. Right. Third round
yes,
pick.
which is fine because the Falcons can't draft nobody in the third round anyway. They ain't picked nobody good in the third round. In fact, matter of fact, I looked through this just yesterday. I said, I wonder what the best third round pick in Falcons history is, and I just kept. Well, I guess since 2000. Man, when I think of the third round picks, it's like,
oh man.
Well, Desmond Ridder, ain't him. Tevin Coleman, running back. Okay, maybe. And then Austin Hooper, tight end. Austin Hooper might be the best third round pick Atlanta had, and he didn't even get a second contract in Atlanta. So Atlanta don't do nothing with third round picks, no way. Okay, so that aside, Judon comes in. He is immediately the best pass rusher in the NFC South because the NFC South doesn't have pass rushers.
I'm about to say Jordan.
The best pass rusher is probably Cam Jordan. But, was he that good last year? No, he wasn't. And the second best pass rusher was Yaya Diaby, maybe, in Tampa Bay. But, So really, who was the best edge rusher in the NFC South? It's now Matthew Judon. With that being said, he's also coming off of an injury. He tore his bicep last year. So he's coming off of an injury, and if you look deeper into his numbers, his pass rush rate isn't as great as his sack numbers. His sack numbers are they can be like this. He had 15 and a half sacks a couple years ago, but he wasn't getting consistent pressure on the quarterback every single play. He also drops back into coverage more than people think. So when he was with the Ravens, he was dropping back in coverage a lot. And Raheem Morris' system is he likes those outside linebackers that can drop back in coverage and rush the passer. So this is not the second coming of John Abraham. Sorry to break it to you. He might flash like Vic Beasley, but it's not the second coming of John Abraham. But I do think it's a good move just because Atlanta now has a better pass rush room because before it was they had nobody who I could rush the passer.
That was the conversation, right? Going into the draft was Dallas Turner. And so now they
yes, that's exactly right.
Well, you know what? Let the Falcons hater take over here for a minute. Okay, piggyback on everything you just said, David. Okay, and I've said this on TV before, and I'll say it on Sunday again, and I've written this many times before. The Falcons have this maddening habit, and they got two maddening habits. Number one, and actually I've been in Atlanta since 1985, so I've been seeing. This is not my first rodeo with the Falcons. They've got this habit of always acting as if they're the smartest person in the room. And you talk about a franchise that didn't have back-to-back winning seasons until the 21st century. A team, that franchise that currently has 6 consecutive losing seasons. So you know what? They get no benefit of the doubt. That's number one. Number two, they've also had this maddening habit of getting guys whose names sounded good yesterday. Okay. This is another example of that. Okay.
Got a long list of those names.
Exactly. So
got a long list.
What's wrong with this picture here? They pick up this guy who's coming off a major bicep surgery.
Looking for a contract.
He's 32. That's nearly looking for a contract.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's what got him out of New England. Okay. And what David just alluded to, his pass rush win rate has been going like this every season, going downward. Okay. And you get him. Okay. Good luck with that. Okay. Now Justin Simmons, I do like. I think that's a good move. But let's do it this way. Okay. Let's go unit by unit. Okay. Quarterback. Iffy, for the reason I just
compared to the rest of the division, though. I don't think it's iffy.
Well, I still take the Baker Mayfield situation over the Falcons quarterback situation because I'm telling you, maybe have me on the show another year from now. You got to go back and say, well, you were right. As a matter of fact, not to pat myself on the back, but on the show I do every Sunday night, they're constantly going back saying that you're right, you're right, you're right, you're right. Okay, mark my word. I hope I'm wrong, but that quarterback situation for the Falcons is going to blow up in their face this year. You watch and see. Okay, so we talk right this year. Okay, so then look at the running backs. Everybody talking about Bijan Robinson,
Yeah.
and all that kind of. Well, first of all, had this great running game last year because that's all they did was run. The receiving core, the worst in the National Football League, is brutal. They you got the second worst. You got Drake London, who's a tight end, who's wide receiver, tight end playing wide receiver, and the rest of those guys. They pick up a guy from the Bears who got demoted, and now he's like they're talking about, oh, this guy's so great. Then the offensive line. Am I stupid? All these people keep talking about this great offensive line. What great offensive line? Jake Matthews, and here's the thing. I talk to NFL scouts all the time. And they've been telling me, Jake Matthews has been going like this every season. And the guy's like, what is it, 32 years old, 33 years old? He's not getting any better. The left guard and the center are just dudes. The right guard, I give him that. I mean, he's good, Lindstrom. And then the right guard, McGarity, what's his name?
The right tackle, Caleb McGarry.
Yeah, McGarry. Everybody forgets 2 years ago he was on his way out the league. And then he comes up last year. We can fog up a mirror and everybody gets all excited. He can fog up a mirror. Well, whoopee! How good is that? And again, it was an offensive line that was just good at pass rushing, pass blocking. That was it. Then we get to the defensive line. You got one guy, one half guy. Grady Jarrett, another guy that's been going like this, who's been injury prone. So you don't have an offensive line. Linebacker, a bunch of dudes not worth mentioning. We just talked about the linebacker. We just talked about that situation.
Secondary
I'll give
good.
him the secondary, somewhat. Well,
Terrell?
Simmons good, and then Bates had a good year last year. AJ Terrell, here's the trivia question. Now, David knows this, so this question is for you, Cory. When is the last time that the great AJ Terrell had an interception?
Oh, I'm guessing you're asking this question because he didn't have one last year. Okay.
Nope.
There's no way it's been
What about
2 years.
What about the year before last? Nope, it's been 3 years.
I mean, they're not throwing his way? Is that the excuse?
That was Desmond
Okay.
Trufant's excuse because Desmond
Okay.
Trufant was actually good. Yeah.
Then I got two other pieces.
3
of the
years?
puzzle.
It's been
Okay.
3 years since he caught a pick.
All these three years. See, this is why I'm the hater, because I bring reality to the situation. Okay, but I'm not finished yet. Okay, so then you got the great coup. Whoa, coup! What a great kicker coup is. All right, well, now David follows them very closely. The last 4 games of the season, this guy disappeared. I mean, how many kicks did he miss his last 4 games? 3 or 4 games? I mean, this guy has lost. And how many times in the history of Major League, the National Football League, has a kicker lost it and then regained it? He's done. They need a kicker. Then let's get to the coach. Okay.
Black man.
Nice guy.
Black
Nice
man.
guy. He's a black man. Everybody likes that.
Yeah.
In Atlanta, Georgia, so people like all that. And very friendly. Calls you, compared to the load that they had before, Arthur Smith was just, it's bad news. So he's all that. But here's the thing about Raheem Morris. And I want him to do well, to be a black man in America. Okay. But let's be honest here. What was a famous line by Bill Parcells about coaching and teams? You are, what's the rest of that? You are what your record
says you are.
Okay? So everybody keeps acting like Raheem just, this is his first time. And then people say, well, he was only an interim with the Falcons. Really? I mean, he was an interim for how many years? How many games? 10 with the Falcons? 10 games, right? Interim?
Like 11? Because they were 0-5. Atlanta was 0-5 and then fired Dan Quinn, and then Raheem took over.
Yeah, about 10,
so
11 games. That's a pretty good amount of games. And then before that, which people want to dismiss, he also was the head coach at Tampa Bay for not 1, not 2, 3 years. Okay? So, we're talking about a man who's been the head coach in the National Football League for nearly 4 years. Here's my question. Okay? And I don't want to seem like I'm trying to be a hater. I'm just throwing out facts here. So, here's the question for you guys. In nearly 4 years as the head coach of the National Football League, Bill Parcells said you are what your record says you are. What is the winning percentage for Raheem Morris as an
36.
NFL head
I'm
coach?
gonna go 36.
I'm stopping at high five.
Mm.
Exactly right. 36%. Okay. So I ain't from Missouri, but you got to show me. Was that a fluke? Well, we're gonna see. So
Yeah.
so you got all these things in play here, and then you got the schedule. It's like, does anybody look at the schedule? I mean, you look at the first 5 or 6 games. I might see one win there, maybe. I mean, you look at that first game against Pittsburgh, for instance, here in Atlanta. Last I checked, they got a pretty good defense. Again, not wish anything bad on anybody, but I mean, is Kirk Cousins going to make out of that first game? We're going to
Oh,
see.
golly.
I
Yeah.
mean, so I don't know. I'm not.
Mike Tomlin doesn't lose to the Falcons.
No,
That's
he
a
doesn't.
fact. That's
And,
an actual fact.
and what did the Steelers do? They beat you up.
Yeah. Then you got the Eagles in prime time. Then you got the Chiefs in prime time.
Mm-hmm. Got the
Saints.
Chiefs. Yep.
So what
But-
is everybody talking about
God.
here? I'm just keeping it real as you young folks like this. I'm just keeping it real.
I don't know
Yep.
why they call you a hater. You bring up facts and stats, bro.
Well, because it doesn't sound
Yeah.
sound good. It doesn't make you feel good, and it really
There's that word again. Feelings. There's that
feel.
word again.
Yeah, yep. It doesn't make you feel very good. But to be honest, it's just like, guys, it is what it is. Like, it is what it is. Especially post Mike Smith, post Dan Quinn. It's like, guys, like, it's not even.
But David, let's put something else in perspective here too. Like I said, I keep saying this. You can't give them the benefit of the doubt because they've had 6 consecutive losing seasons.
Yeah.
How can you give them the benefit of the doubt with a record like that? Okay,
Look, I don't trust the front office.
you just
If,
can't
you,
do
if
it.
you're telling me
But
you're not even interested in talking to Bill Belichick, all right.
Well,
All right.
We're gonna be here for another hour if we talk about the
Look
front
at the
office.
Georgia. Let's get to the dogs.
Let's get to the Georgia
Look at the
Bulldogs.
dogs.
Yeah, let's get to the dogs.
Okay,
Let's get to the dogs.
Okay, now, and I was accused of being a hater of the Georgia Bulldogs too for every year because I told the truth about them too. They were the biggest underachieving team in the history of college football because they were. Up until the last 4 years, that's exactly what they were, getting all this talent and not being able to win a big one forever. Okay, but here's the thing, and this is a 2-part thing with me and Kirby Smart. Kirby Smart, it kind of reminds me of the movie Animal House. You guys ever seen the movie Animal House, the comedy? Okay, based on Miami, Ohio, by the way, my alma mater. And in Animal House, you got this one scene where the dude's got an angel on his shoulder and he's got the devil on the other shoulder. And that's kind of the way I look at Kirby Smart. Angel as far as football, devil when it comes away from football. Let's deal with the good part first. There is no doubt that Kirby Smart is by far the best college football coach in America. It's not even close. The dude is incredible. And what I like about Kirby is he is, without a doubt, hands down, the most honest football coach when it comes to football in the country. He tells you exactly what he thinks. Okay? He's brilliant. He's great at hiring staff. They got the best offensive coordinator in college football, the best defensive coordinator in college football, the best staff in college football. Consistently. Kirby Smart. They got the best talent in college football. He's the best recruiter. So with that combination, you can't beat them. They're the favorites and should be the favorite to win the national championship again. Whether they do it or not, we'll see. But going in, there's no way in the world you can pick anybody besides Georgia. They got a quarterback who's a Heisman Trophy candidate. Okay, they got running backs. They got more running backs than they've ever had at Georgia. Talented ones. They got another NFL offensive line. Now they lose these stud receivers. They're deeper at receiver than they've ever been. Their front seven is loaded. Second, they got it all. Okay, now here is the devil part of Kirby Smart. Everything I said about him when it comes to football is completely the opposite away from football. As my grandmother used to say, I wouldn't trust that man from here to there. All these kids being arrested for driving drunk and speeding, and it got people dying, and him saying, "Oh, I don't know. This is surprising me." Man, get out of my face with that. How in the world can you be the biggest micromanager on the face of the earth, which he is, knowing every single detail of your program, which is why this is so successful, yet pleading ignorance about these guys going out speeding and getting arrested. You can't have it both ways. And I'll take it beyond Kirby. What has happened is Georgia has essentially become Florida State. Florida State was the worst program along these lines until Georgia. Back when St. Bobby Bowden was around, and matter of fact, I've been warned. I don't know if the statute of limitations is up by now, but I was warned by the administration of Florida State that if I stepped foot in Tallahassee and they knew about it, that they would have something waiting for me, because I was the only person who dared to rip the great Bobby Bowden.
Yeah,
Did
legend.
you guys know who Bobby Bowden was?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And they just called him Saint Bobby. Okay, everything I just said about this guy, Kirby Smart, that's where Bobby Bowden was, but it was worse, because he would play this game like he was this good Christian, and that and G shucks, golly wow, blah blah blah, that sort of thing. While his peers out getting arrested for all this other stuff, and he would make a big joke about it, and the media would laugh and just let him get by with it. And the reason he got by with it was because the administration at Florida State, from top to bottom, they just wanted the Al Davis philosophy.
Just win, baby.
What was Al Davis philosophy?
Just win.
That's it, and that's what we got at Georgia. Kirby, we don't want to, we don't care about the details. Just get the job done. I mean, we'll just cover up for everything.
And they're winning. They are winning. We'll see what happens when they come to Austin, though.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm interested in that game.
We'll see.
Now let me ask you this: you're the Texas guy. As we speak right now, what do you think is going to happen in that game?
I have Texas winning that game just because the environment. You saw what happened when Alabama came down here, and they should have lost that game. If it wasn't for Bryce Young's theatrics. And I just don't trust Carson Beck as much as I trust Bryce Young back in that day. And so I'm not a Carson Beck believer. I will say that. I think Quinn Ewers may have more NFL characteristics than Carson does. But outside of the quarterback room, I do think Georgia had a lot of talent, more than Texas. But I just think the home field advantage may play a factor. And Texas losing C.J. Baxter is something that is big time for that running back room when it comes to that 1-2 punch with him and Jaden Blue. So I'm kind of worried about the running game when it comes to Texas, but we don't know yet until I feel like week 2. We'll find out a lot about this running game when they play Michigan, if they're ready to kind of carry that load or not without CJ. But yeah.
Well, here's my counter to what you're saying here. I hear what you're saying. Counter number 1, Carson Beck. Carson Beck is extremely accurate, and he may very well be the most accurate Power 5 quarterback in the country. And there's something that's being added to his arsenal that should scare everybody to death. Mike Bobo, the offensive coordinator, says he's going to get him to throw deep now. They're purposely working on this deep game. And they're doing it for 2 reasons. They're doing it for the public statement part of it, where they just wanted to add that to his arsenal to help Georgia. But also, I talked to NFL scouts quite a bit. That's the one thing that they criticize him for, his not throwing a catchable deep pass. Okay, but if he perfects that, which looks like he is, he's going to be very dangerous. The second of all, to me, Texas is what Georgia used to be. They're a tease program. And until they prove they're not a team
I think
anymore,
they proved a little bit last year, though, to counter that. I do think making it to the Sugar Bowl was a step for the program to make them believe that they can do it. They can compete at a high level. And I'm here, right? And I see what Sarkisian is doing with the culture here. And you talk about last year having 11 dudes get drafted, first time since 08, 07. You know what I'm saying? You can see the trending of the tide. And this year, same exact thing. There's looking to be 10 or 11 guys get drafted as well off this squad. And so I think they have a well-oiled machine right now when it comes to talent. Question is, can Sarkisian call up the right plays so that talent can flourish and succeed on the field when it comes time to it? But I think they have the talent to go toe-to-toe. I mean, think about the transfers with Isaiah Bond coming in, Silas Bowden from Oregon State. I mean, they got dudes. Makuba from Clemson playing safety. Like, they got a lot of name recognition. So I just think, can they put it all together and can they make the right game plan? That's the biggest question. But I think you're seeing the change right now. I do think it's a real change for Texas.
And I'm telling you, people forget about this too. Georgia, again, come to football, I'm a Kirby fan. I just don't like him in that other stuff. Kirby has proven he can win blowouts and he can win close games. I mean, that guy, he can coach his tail off. Okay, he can find a way to get it done, and it doesn't matter whether they're playing in Athens or elsewhere, which is why they won. What is it, David? 42 out of the last 44 games, whatever it is.
Something like that.
And
yeah, if
say,
your name ain't Alabama, good luck.
About
that's
Georgia
exactly
thing.
right.
I'm scared of Georgia because of what happened last year. Like, they have motivation. They haven't really had motivation in a couple years. The motivation was to repeat, but that's not real, I feel like, motivation. This, getting the way it happened, not just not winning at all, but not even being in the playoff. Like, they have a vendetta. And so that is the scary part with the Dogs this year, is that they have actual motivation that they can lean into and look back on and say, hey, they disrespected us last year by not putting us in the playoff after losing one game in the SEC title game. And so let's make a statement this year and show them that we are still the Dogs and that we're still the best team in the country. That does scare me, that they have actual motivation.
I'll tell you another part of motivation they have here, and those not getting a lot of play, and David, you probably know this. Did you know that Georgia can play 4 games, not 1, not 2, not 3, 4 games this season at Mercedes-Benz Stadium? They got the opening game, which I'll be at next week when they play Clemson, okay? The SEC championship game, a semifinal game is here in Atlanta in the Peach Bowl, and the national championship game is in Atlanta. So you don't think that Kirby's drilling that into his team as we speak?
Yeah, he is. He absolutely is. He's a master motivator. He is a master motivator. He convinced his guys after winning a national championship that they were predicted to go 6-6 the next year, and they believed it, and they were like, "Yeah, man, everybody doubted us, bro. We was gonna be 6-6." I was like, "No one said that. Nobody said that, but it worked. It worked. They ran the table and put a hurting on TCU in front of everybody and their mamas. Like it worked. Like it was insane. We got to run. My wife's going to be home. She's making tacos, and I told her this was going to be over by the time we did that. So I appreciate everybody for tuning in, joining us on the Believers Bench. Terry, we will absolutely have you back one day. You're a friend of the program. You're an OG of the program.
There's so much stuff we didn't talk about that we need to talk about.
Yes, there is. There absolutely is. Well, thank you guys so much. You all have a blessed one.